What if I told you that a rock could change the world? 5,000 years ago, someone just like you and me looked at a rock tumbling down a hill, and instead of walk right past it, they decided to ask themselves a dangerous question. That dangerous question led to the rock becoming the wheel as we know it today, and it literally propelled humanity forward. Or because someone decided to look at a rock differently. Now, when we think about innovation, we think about it requiring massive resources, or it requiring advanced degrees, or perhaps a genius gene. But that couldn't be further from the truth, and that's limiting our beliefs. Now, innovation is not about having that lightning bolt of an idea, or perhaps, you're sitting in your bathtub and you have this eureka moment. The reality is that innovation is messy. It's iterative. It's about failing forward. Now, I want to share with you a story of frustration. So when you are frustrated or when you're annoyed, that is your invitation to innovate. Now, to the next slide, excuse my terrible choice of clothing in this picture, but when I was 15 years old, I was taking a walk with my dad, and he is my favorite person in the world, and I learn everything from him. And he has been someone that has been answering all of my silly questions since I was a young kid, and I've had many. So we were taking a walk in my farmhouse in northern India, and I could barely breathe because of the smoke that was coming from a nearby field. I asked my dad what that was, and he mentioned that when rice is harvested, there's a lot of rice husk and straw that's left behind. And in order to clear the field, the farmers need to burn the stubble so that they can grow the next crop. Now that got me thinking, and I thought about that problem for several days. You know how sometimes when you look at something and then when you observe it, you see two completely different things? That's what happened with this problem. So I got to researching, and I took the rice waste in my lab, which was my mum's kitchen, and I'm not disowned yet, which is great. And that led to the innovation of greenwood. Greenwood is a low-cost building material that's used to provide affordable housing to the underprivileged in India, which is made up of rice husk and straw. Now, all of this happened because I decided to question, and I decided to ask that silly question of, why is this happening? The silly questions up on screen in terms of what is the future of retail? What if I didn't need a passport when I was traveling through the airport? Wouldn't recommend it, but do think about it. All of this led me to the invention of greenwood, and what was different about this time was I asked questions when I was younger as a kid, but what was different was I had the audacity to try, and I had the audacity to question. Now, here's something that innovators or people won't tell you about innovation, which is innovation is not about a spanking new idea, but it's about combining existing ideas in different ways. Now, let's say if you take Uber. Uber combined smartphones and GPS and cars, everything that was already existent, in a new way and in a new proposition that solved a real-life problem for people. Now, it's about connecting the dots that others don't see. Take Spotify Wrapped, for example, and I have seen so many Spotify Wrapped on my stories. But what they did was Spotify took data that you and I were creating for them, and they used that to build shareable stories about our musical identity. Now, what I want, basically, at the end of the day, all of these things are fine, but I have a challenge for you, which is after this talk, when you're on your way home or tomorrow, pick up something in your home and look at it differently, or think about what frustrates you about it, or how you can make it better. There's something around looking at things and observing, and I realized that I was going into a lot of coffee shops, and I spend lots of my time in coffee shops, and I love it. And I went inside the coffee shop, and I realized a lot of the coffee shops had circular tables as opposed to square ones. And then I got to, thinking about it and did my research and realized that circular tables invite people to sit on your own rather than square ones. So they made people more comfortable just to have a cup of coffee on their own. Coffee shops end up using less pungent cheese in their sandwiches so they don't overpower the smell of coffee. Now, the reason I'm sharing all of this with you is so that you question the things around you, because truly you'll be amazed by how such basic things have great meaning behind them. Now, I do have to caveat this and say, ideas are cheap. Execution is everything. Theodore Levitt, who was an economist, said, creativity is thinking up new things, and innovation is doing new things. In 2008, Airbnb had this crazy idea. What if strangers slept in my spare bedroom? Today, it's worth billions. And they didn't wait around. In fact, their first office was a cereal box, quite literally. During the 2008 elections, in order to fundraise for their company, they sold Obama O's and Captain McCain cereals, and that's how they got started. They didn't wait for anyone else's permission, or they didn't doubt themselves, but actually jumped headfirst. Now, I want to talk a bit more about what innovation is. Innovation can be a lot of things. It can be observational. So Newton saw an apple falling and realized the force of gravity. It can be accidental, for example, the unintended cathode ray experiments leading to X-rays. It can be a product of technological convergence, so smartphones being brought up from the convergence of telephony and smart screens. It can be powered by societal needs, like the vaccine, which ended up saving the lives of millions. Or it can be linear, so you're talking about your research, you're talking about your production, and then you're talking about your commercialization, which is normally seen in industries which are capital intensive, like the pharmaceutical industry, that would spend 10 to 15 years researching about their product and then giving it to the masses. Or it can be circular, so you're talking more about, in the tech space where you try to trump sort of adaptability over perfection, so it's a cyclical process. Now, it can be all of those things, but what it cannot be is unintentional. Now, I was reading this one book by Annie Dukes, and it's called Thinking in Bets. And she compares poker to innovation. And it's so interesting to think about it that way, because when you do think about innovation as well, it's not thinking about certainty, but it's actually thinking about how you can best manage the risk with the information that you already have with you. So the two things that I thought really stood out in her talk were embrace uncertainty as part of that process. So it's not about being certain, it's about how, when new information becomes available, how are you going to pivot your plan when it comes to your products or when it comes to your services? How do you best react to an ever-changing landscape? Second, use probabilistic thinking. Thinking in bets, it's having a foundation of what you know, but then it's building on top of that in terms of, if X event happens, how am I going to deal with it? Now, instead of working in the darkness, I truly want to test out the power of innovation with all of you here today by sharing a project that's been really close to my heart, and I've been working on it for the past year. And I thought about it, and many times when founders come up with an idea, they want to scurry away and work in the darkness, but I truly feel innovation is about sharing it forward and getting ideas and kind of getting other people's perspectives. So in a recent study done by Dolmio, our wonderful sauce brand, they said that we spend 37 hours deciding what to eat every single year. And I probably spend way more than that. To put it into context, it is watching all 8 Harry Potter movies twice. We spend 9,000 hours of our lifetime in grocery stores. And we spend £800 worth of food that's wasted every single year. Now that got me to thinking, what if there was an app where you could scan the ingredients that you already have in your fridge or in your cupboard, and it gave you a curated list of recipes that you can then choose from and make. This led me to the creation of butter. Now, the reason I'm sharing this story with you today is because an idea which stemmed out of innovation actually stemmed out of my actual frustration of not knowing, one, what to eat every single day, then going on a recipe app, scrolling endlessly, coming up with a recipe that has 1,000,001 ingredients. Then I would go to the grocery store, I would go in, I would burn a hole in my pocket and come out with quail eggs that I really didn't need in the first place. That is talking about the power of innovation. And the reason I share this is because I'm on a journey of ideation and execution with butter. So if anyone's interested, I'd love to hear your thoughts after this talk. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this talk today, is to see the world around you differently. As my journey from a curious teenager to someone that's working with global organizations as a consultant, there is one fundamental thing that I have learned. It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. That will get you nowhere. But it's about having the courage to ask those stupid questions that no one else has the courage to ask, but actually they kind of really, really want to know the answer. It's about knowing your place, and it's also about seeing possibilities where other people always see problems. Now, here's my open mind challenge to all of you today. It's start small and think big. Start with a frustration of yours as the building base, and then come up with the next plan of what you think is down the line. Always have the bigger picture in mind in terms of where you want to get to. Second is embrace the static. Fail, but be good at failing. That totally sounds like something a parent would say, but failing is good. It gives you the data that you require to make your product or service better the next time. Share that idea with the people around you, because each single perspective is going to give you your next iteration of the idea that you're trying to bring to market. Always remember that every single idea and every single thing started with someone just like you looking at something everyone had already seen, but thinking no one else had thought. Thank you so much.